Hey, what's going on, everyone? Matt Jarbo here, and today we're going to be talking about a lot of Marvel news. We're talking about a live action Miles Morales apparently coming in to the MCU, a little bit of light reading to look at in regards to what to expect coming in to Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and of course Marvel pushing out the weird news about voting. It's a weird thing. It's not something I'm against 100%, but it's going to be very politically hot, as well as a couple of the little stories, like apparently Christian Bale has now made his way to Australia in order to start filming Thor: Love and Thunder. All of that and probably a bit more here today on the podcast. And let me start off with the more controversial one of the day. All right, we're just going to lead with the more controversial story. And that, of course, is Marvel putting out this particular tweet today. And it's not just them. This is Disney PR, by the way. Disney PR through a number of the different brands, Star Wars included. I did talk about that. They said here, make your voice heard and vote. And if you notice, the voting is absolutely the Captain America shield. On Star Wars, it was the Rebel Alliance logo. That's what took over the O, which I discussed the idea about voting in between the two different factions. Do you vote for the Resistance or do you vote for the Empire? And obviously you can see which way they're going, but I thought to an extent it might be left up to some form of interpretation. Turns out, though, in this particular situation, no. This isn't an official video, but it is one that is being circulated around by a number of actors in the Marvel movies. If you recall, when the Avengers came out in 2016 to stump for Hillary Clinton under that Joss Whedon super PAC, that was some cringe. Now we have this one here where they're basically telling you who to vote for, and they're using your favorite superheroes to do it. Again, your opinion on this may vary, but let's take a look.
5 years ago, we lost. All of us. We lost friends. We lost family. We lost a part of ourselves. Today we have a chance to take it all back. You know your teams, you know your missions. Get the stones, get them back. One round trip each, no mistakes, no do-overs. Most of us are going somewhere we know. That doesn't mean we should know what to expect. Be careful. Look out for each other. This is the fight of our lives, and we're gonna win. Whatever it takes.
This is our moment. This is our mission.
Assemble.
Yeah, it's it's a little bit, it's inspiring. I'm not going to lie. I do love that part in Endgame with Captain America and giving that speech, especially with the music. I do love the Avengers music. When you hear it, it does give me a little bit of the goosebumps and whatnot. But what cracked me up the most was the ending of this thing, where they very much were pushing who to vote for, who to vote. They're telling you who to vote for, folks. Whether or not you want to do that is entirely up to you. My personal take on it is vote. I'm a liberal progressive. I live in a left-leaning blue state. You can already tell who I voted for. But you can be different than me, and that's okay. I'm not going to hate you. I'm not going to force you. I'm not going to badger you over it. That's not my deal. But I will say this though. Like, I understand precisely the message that they're trying to get through here, but I can also understand the pushback that's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of pushback on this thing. And that pushback obviously is going to be from people out there who don't want there to be politics in their superhero movies. Never mind the fact that Captain America, who is very popular, was a super soldier created during World War II in order to fight fascism, to fight the Nazis, to fight Hitler, to fight Hydra, to fight the Red Skull, to fight all of these things. So, I mean, obviously it's been bathed in politics. Comic books, especially Marvel comic books with the X-Men and their origins, is bathed in politics. So you're never going to get away from it. Whether or not you accept it for what it is or you get mad, that's entirely up to you. But really, if you follow any of this stuff, your favorite Marvel Avenger is most likely a bleeding heart liberal. So that's something at this point you have to know about. Again, that's not officially sanctioned. Somebody made that, somebody put that together. That of course is just what they've been putting around. So why don't we dive in to the first little bit of news today that I have. And that of course is this tweet coming in from Love and Thunder News, or Love Thunder News on Twitter, where they've got a 22-second clip that says Australian paparazzi Kobe Thatcher has shared video footage of Christian Bale arriving in Sydney, Australia for Thor, Love and Thunder. And it's literally just, if you're watching this, it's nothing but a grainy cell phone video of some people exiting a plane in the middle of the night. And I mean, that's not much. It's just, I guess that was Christian Bale, folks. I guess that was Christian Bale. But what this means, and this is actually a good thing, what this means is that filming for a lot of these properties, a lot of these movies, is starting to resume. Obviously, with the current state of COVID, precautions are being taken place. In Australia, they are shut. The cities have been shut down. So like they've got really, really, really stringent requirements for COVID, for lockdown, for safe precautions. And that is driving a lot of people in Australia insane. But keep that in mind when you're looking at this. It's like, okay, they've got that locked down. And so that's good that these people are being protected, that the crews are being protected. And with any luck, they'll be able to film without a hitch and be able to give us something that is truly unique, truly interesting, and not at all going to be a gigantic crap show. Who knows what's going to happen? I don't, but the movie comes out, I believe, sometime next year, and I'm looking forward to seeing it. So I'll keep you guys updated with whatever news comes out here. While I'm here, you guys can watch me do this live. I'm going to follow them on Twitter. So if they have any new news, I'll be able to get that news and then, well, give it over to you guys. So another story popped up last night after I had finished recording for the day. And that according to comicbook.com here, they're saying that Hawkeye's Disney Plus series is going to be filming at the Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, which is awesome, actually. I think Tyler Perry's done a lot for the film community out there in Atlanta, and he's got an insanely cool studio. So why not have a shot there? So it says here that before long at all, cameras will begin rolling on Hawkeye, and at last fans will finally get the series featuring the most important piece of the Avengers. Pre-production on the Jeremy Renner-led series has been taking place for quite some time now, with principal photography likely to begin in a matter of weeks. When it does begin, one new report suggests that a solid chunk of the production will film on the sound stages available at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta. This is coming in from Charles Murphy. And again, grain of salt this, and I say that because yesterday he dropped that article about Daveed Diggs and Nick Kroll potentially being considered for Moon Knight, and then an hour later, Hollywood Reporter was all like, Oscar Isaac, bitch. So it became this, it calls everything into question. And I'm going to talk about other scoopers in today's podcast too, so definitely keep an eye out for that. But again, grain of salt everything here. And I'm not criticizing Charles. I actually kind of like the guy. I think he's more legit than others. I just want to say that. However, he says that sets have been under construction for the past month as Marvel Studios crews aim for a post-Thanksgiving production start date. Barring any further delays, he suggests that the series could have a late 2021 premiere on Disney Plus if it manages to avoid any COVID-related shutdowns. And this is actually super important. So here's what, look at it. We got WandaVision that's done in the can, and it's going to be coming out sometime this year, probably sometime next month after Mandalorian ends, in my opinion. Then you've got Loki and Falcon and Winter Soldier sometime in 2021. And since this is not going to be a continuing show for WandaVision, it's a one-off, they're going to have to put out something out. Well, there's also What If, and there's like the Nick Fury files as well. So there are a couple things that they're going to be doing that are going to be interesting, I think, in order to kind of fill out the gap. But they're so lacking on Marvel content right now, and it's been a whole year of Disney Plus. So that is something, really that they need to work on here. Now, comicbook.com here says they spoke with Hawkeye producer Trin Tran last year, and she teased a fascinating young female was interested in the role of Kate Bishop. However, it has been heavily rumored that it was Haley Steinfeld. Of course, she has kind of come out and denied it, but, we see how this kind of stuff goes. We don't know who's going to be playing Kate Bishop just yet. We just know that both are supposed to be in it, and it could potentially be very similar to a Hawkeye cameo that was in, Thor. Now, I'm saying that only because they haven't, maybe they'll shoot around the cameos, and then they'll figure it out later on, and they'll add that person in post is what I'm trying to say. But if it is based on the run that I think is based off of, then Kate Bishop plays a key part in that. And that would be like, you'd have to have Kate Bishop. But then again, Jeremy Renner might use whatever clout or pull or weight he has in order to be able to get people, you know, to make it more about him and his character, considering that he was upset that he played the bad guy for most of the first Avengers. He got a bit more of a beefier story in Avengers Age of Ultron. He wasn't even in Infinity War at all. And then he only popped up in Endgame for a fair amount. So it's like he probably wants more of the spotlight before they just pass the torch on to Kate Bishop, whoever she may be. I do think it's going to be Haley Steinfeld, but Apple TV has given her a new, they renewed her show, her Emily Dickinson show on Apple TV. So that could be something that's holding it up. Who knows where that's at right now? So we definitely have to wait to see on that one. So there's a little bit, one of the things I want to do with this podcast is I want to look at op-eds as they happen, because we are going to get to lulls with news, and people are always going to be writing op-eds. And I do think people's opinions on the MCU are interesting in what they suggest. So there's this one that came in today from Joe Gillis out of Screenrant, where he says here, Doctor Strange 2 needs Sam Raimi to make it more like Thor Ragnarok. Now, that's a very interesting title. It's a very interesting thesis for a particular statement here. But what the subline here is, Doctor Strange 2 is set to bring horror to the MCU, with director Sam Raimi overseeing a Ragnarok-like reinvention of the Marvel Sorcerer Supreme. I don't know if I'd go that far. Okay, this isn't like going from Alan Taylor, who did Thor, The Dark World, or even Kenneth Branagh, who did the first Thor, to Taika Waititi, who did Thor Ragnarok, where the tonal shift is like almost night and day. You know, I mean, Scott Derrickson, while not necessarily diving into a lot of horror elements of the first Doctor Strange, he gave it a lot of trippy elements that could be somewhat rooted or seated in horror. And I don't think we need to go full on Ragnarok. I just don't. I love Ragnarok, but I don't really think we need it. And Raimi is probably a good person to do it because he is able to mix comedy and horror and action very well. It'll be very interesting to see. But this is what Joe here has to say. He says, while 2016's Doctor Strange was fairly well received, it hardly set the world on fire. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is therefore looking to reinvent the character, with acclaimed horror director Sam Raimi at the helm. I just want to also point out, that hasn't even been confirmed yet. You know, they've made no official announcement on that. I always find it to be funny that everyone's right. I mean, look, the likelihood of it being real is probably like 99%, but they still haven't said it yet. Anyway, directed by Scott Derrickson, the first Doctor Strange, while unique in some regards, failed to make a big impression, offering little beyond a few trippy set pieces that audiences hadn't seen before. What? Like, the visual stylings of Doctor Strange was at the time a year before Ragnarok, which went full on Willy Wonka, literally in one scene. But no, it still had a lot of very interesting visuals. The way that they made the sling rings work, and the way that they played with all the cosmic side of stuff for the first time, Dormammu's color scheme, it looked like it was grounded in more of a Lovecraftian type horror. And I know they're going to try probably recreating that for this, but you can't sit there and say that it didn't move the needle. It absolutely moved the needle. The effects that they were able to use in that movie were very good. It still holds up in my opinion. You know, so I don't know. I just find that to be such a weird argument to make. It's like, let me just set up this argument by saying that this thing sucks, but with Raimi, it's going to be amazing. Look, man, you know, what, like Raimi's movies, I love Raimi, but Raimi's movies are hit or miss. Let's be fair. And like, what was the last thing he directed? The Oz, the Great and Powerful from 2013, I think was the last movie he directed, if I recall. That didn't set the world on fire either. You know, Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness. Yeah, they did in their own right. Spider-Man 1 and 2 and 3, I guess. Yeah, they did too. But other than that, he hasn't done that much in regards to very effects heavy work outside of Oz, the Great and Powerful, which is a lot of green screen stuff. I don't want to get too far ahead of it here, but anyway. So it says here that introducing supernatural elements into the Marvel Cinematic Universe is long present in Marvel comic books continuity. Stuck with telling Strange's origin story, Scott Derrickson's film feels like it was a prelude to something bigger and better, hampered by the character's prior lack of mainstream exposure, and therefore unable to fully commit to the more outlandish aspects of his world. But the thing is, you also have to ease the audience in. Okay, you have to ease the audience in. You have to play ouch, ouch, just the tip. Okay, you can't just go full in. It's going to confuse people. It's why the multiverse side of things in any format needs to be eased into the audience for them to understand what's going on. The average person in Oklahoma who doesn't read comics is not going to fully get it. And that's going to then turn the audience off. If you make the audience feel stupid, they're going to walk away. So there's that to consider as well. I'm already like not really liking how this guy's framing Doctor Strange. I feel oddly protective over Doctor Strange in this moment. However, he does talk a bit about Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor Ragnarok, especially with allowing them to kind of explore the zanier aspects. And Doctor Strange, while, yeah, it does have some more of the zanier stuff there, Benedict Cumberbatch plays the character very straight, plays the character very well, and that's very much part of its charm. So he does go on to talk a bit about Raimi's place in the pantheon of legendary horror directors and everything else. So, okay, it says here, Raimi's visual style is unparalleled, utilizing odd angles and kinetic camera work to create heightened worlds that fittingly feel like a comic book brought to life. Yeah, and that can be good or bad. I just went and saw Evil Dead and Army of Darkness at a double feature at a drive-in right after Labor Day. So, I mean, like, I've recently rewatched those movies, and while they're a lot of fun and they still hold up in my opinion, I wouldn't look at them as being comic book. These are like lower budgeted films. I kind of feel like that's kind of the argument there, right? Is like, oh no, he's very kinetic. He's very zany in the way he does things. You know, cause he works within a low budget. He plays very well in that field, right? Like not every music video director can go on to go and direct a $200 million movie and have it be good when they're used to short form storytelling in 3.5 minutes that they would get from a single. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, while the MCU received a paint job in recent years, becoming comfortable with bolder color palettes, aside from a few choice sequences, the staging and shot types tend to be fairly functional. Raimi is likely to rectify this, the camera feeling like a character in its own right, rather than simply a recording device in much of his work. What's more, Raimi has extensive special effects experience, from low-budget efforts like The Evil Dead to blockbusters like The Oz, the Great and Powerful. You can argue special effects. When I argue special effects, I mean, it is kind of a, yes, he works better in the low budget space. He utilizes what he has available to him, which is why I think he's drawn to lower budget horror films overall as a producer and as a director. But Oz, the Great and Powerful, and even Spider-Man 3, very effects driven. But at the same time, not the best story-wise. So we have to also talk about that, though. We have to talk about the stories. You can't just sit there and say, I need to have zany, I need to have all this stuff happen and not actually be a thing where you're telling a cohesive story. That's all I'm saying on that one. Now it says, with a knack for blending practical and digital effects, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness is as Lovecraftian as his title implies. Expect more grotesque creatures straight out of Raimi's Evil Dead playbook, as well as the odd possession or two courtesy of Elizabeth Olsen's returning Scarlet Witch. Okay, look, he's not making Ash Williams in the Multiverse of Madness. All right, Marvel is a heavily homogenized, producer-driven series. Raimi is like a guest director in that series. He'll have a little bit of wiggle room, but don't go into it expecting a high-budget Evil Dead. God, I would love that, though. I would love that. But don't expect it. All right, expect maybe the most kinetic camera work you'll probably get is akin to the Doc Ock scene, origin scene in Spider-Man 2, which is still awesome, by the way. So that's a lot of what you're going to get. But don't go into it thinking you're going to get all this stuff because it's Sam Raimi. He's still going to be underneath Kevin Feige, and there could be some creative differences there. Why do you think Scott Derrickson left? Feige was going to let Derrickson go into the horror. But Feige, as you can tell, probably wanted to open up the Multiverse of Madness as a way to bring in X-Men, Fantastic Four, the Illuminati, from what I've been hearing from other scoopers, things along those lines. So what happens when you have that is you have to then find a way to make it more palatable and more approachable to the audience. And that's what Raimi is brought in for a way to kind of replace the low-budget indie director, Scott Derrickson, with another low-budget director who has made the successful jump to these kind of films. And I'm pretty sure, like, Like, I'm just saying, like, that's what it is. Like, that's what it is. Like, I think Joe here, who wrote this article, is very much thinking like too big, too broadly. But he does finish up here by saying, while tonal clashes are an obvious concern when introducing horror into the MCU, Raimi's sensibilities tend to skew towards horror comedy and thus should bridge the gap as well. Comedy has been at the heart of the MCU's success since day one and actually functions much in the same way as horror, with a setup followed by a punchline, after which the audience either laughs or screams. Raimi understands this connection and is able to blend the two seamlessly disparate tones, as seen in Evil Dead 2 specifically. Even his Spider-Man trilogy contained a lot of tonal juggling, with Doc Ock's violent lab awakening seen in Spider-Man 2, sitting alongside the frothy rom-com montages and spectacular action set pieces. Like Thor before Ragnarok, Doctor Strange needs a jolt in the arm, and Sam Raimi looks to be able to provide it. Maybe, like, I'm not saying he's not going to do a good job. I just don't necessarily like this op-ed. I don't look at it the same way. I think Raimi is going to be able to juggle being able to bring an audience in. I think that's why he's brought in. It's not for his certain cinematic style, his directing style, his kinetic flair with camera. It's because he's able to merge that gap, right? He's able to get us over this and create something entertaining in the process. All right. This is not like a standalone entry. This is part of a massive multiverse, a massive cinematic franchise, the largest cinematic franchise. Don't overthink what Raimi's going to bring to the table and what he's going to be allowed to do. I'm just saying, like, modify your expectations. However, that being said, there was an interesting tweet that popped up from Casey Walsh, who runs Geeks Worldwide. He's the EIC of Geeks Worldwide, and his credibility is kind of hit or miss sometimes. But he says, I would highly suggest checking out this run before the next Doctor Strange movie. And he's responding to Up to Task, who's talking about Doctor Strange and the Sorcerer Supreme as a great comic that people slept on. And to give you an idea of what those, some of those images here, you can see this on the screen, the Out of Time, and another book as well that would help give you an idea as to maybe what to expect from Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness. This is going to be some stuff they're going to pull from, which does seem to make a fair amount of sense. The more we get into it, because they're going to probably be pulling from as much as they possibly can in order to make this thing a reality. But I hope they don't go too far and add in too many villains. I do think what they're doing with Spider-Man 3 is ultimately going to end up being kind of like the bar. That's going to set the tone. And Multiverse of Madness is probably going to like try to knock it out of the park. Does that make a lot of sense? I hope it does. If not, you guys can let me know. However, let's get to the final story of the day, which is one that I've been sitting on. And that, of course, is Miles Morales apparently is joining the MCU in live action films. This is coming in from Mikey Sutton. Again, take everything with this with a grain of salt. I am friends with Mikey. I like to make that abundantly clear, but I tell him to his face too, take it with a grain of salt. So this is what he is saying here. There will be 2 Spider-Mans. On July 4th, I exclusively scooped on the Cosmic Wonder YouTube channel that Miles Morales will spin off in his own cinematic franchise called Ultimate Spider-Man, based on his comic book series. Morales will be the talk of the town, or maybe the talk of the town now, but during early summer when I was dropping one leak after another about Morales, it was radio silence. I'm now being told that the live-action Spider-Verse film I initially reported in May will end up becoming the Morales franchise. This accomplishes 2 major goals. First, it will finally provide Morales with a series of movies beyond his animated Into the Spider-Verse films. Morales has been hot stuff, and he needs to join Tom Holland's Spider-Man on the silver screen while keeping him as well. Best of both worlds. Secondly, calling them Spider-Verse films will lessen any confusion with the Holland Spider-Man movies, and they'll be branded with the familiar title as well. Now, will Kevin Feige produce them, though? And Mikey here is being told that the plan is, as both Disney and Sony would like a few MCU superheroes to meet the new kid on the block. So, if that's the case, then that's basically what that means, is that, yes, the Feige will probably end up very much producing them, because that's just going to be that's going to be the trade-off. Now, we can get a bit of the idea of this looking at the Spider-Man 3 casting announcement with Electro, the rumor of the other characters coming on in from other franchises. I mean, we're starting to see here that Sony is desperate to open the multiverse. That's very true. Sony is so desperate to open the multiverse They want all of these characters intertwined with Marvel because they see it as being big bucks. And just earlier today, even Sony consolidated their television and film marketing department into one, which goes to tell me that they realize that there's going to be a lot of play for films and a lot of play for streaming and television, but they also need to consolidate their own expenses right now. So they need this deal to work with Marvel because they know that Marvel means money. And that's like, Marvel holds all the cards on this one, but Sony's going to be able to bargain with all those characters. And I think Feige in the multiverse aspect of things is very much going to want to push that. And I've said this before, and I'll stand by it. If DC is doing anything, wait to see what Feige's reaction to it is going to be. When DC started talking about the multiverse, all of a sudden we got Doctor Strange in the multiverse of madness. So clearly he pays attention, and whatever DC does, he reacts to it. So it's very fascinating to watch that and how that whole thing plays out. So really, that's where we find ourselves on this one. I would love to see a Spider-Man movie with Miles Morales in it, see an Ultimate Spider-Man movie. I think one of the reasons why that's a hot topic that Mikey didn't touch on is a 2018 Spider-Man video game. Spoiler, it's been 2 years, but spoiler, ends with Miles Morales being bit by the spider and then going to Peter Parker, who he is friends with in the game, and going like, hey, there's something I got to tell you, and shows him that he has the spider powers, spider abilities. And then it ends with Peter Parker also jumping up on the roof or on the ceiling and saying like, yeah, I got something to tell you too. And then in the new game, the Miles Morales Spider-Man game that's launching with the PS5 here in a couple weeks, that is also going to have Miles and Peter Parker. And because that game is so beloved and because it's so good, you could see why they would want to find a way to bring this character in. Never mind how popular Miles Morales is with comics. Comics aren't selling as much anymore. We can't look at it from that perspective. It's got to be in the mainstream market, what's going to do well. And Miles Morales' character has shot up through the ranks because of Into the Spider-Verse, as well as those video games. So that's my take on it. I want to hear your thoughts, obviously. So let me know in the comment section here on YouTube. You guys can follow me on Twitter at @mjarbo if you're listening to this in the podcast form. But I want to hear your thoughts. That's everything I got for today. A bit more stuff probably than I should have talked about, but it is what it is. And I always want to hear your thoughts, hear your opinions. So let me know. I'll talk to you guys all later. Have yourself a fantastic one. Thank you again for watching, and peace out.